In March 2017 we used a 2015 38-foot Island Spirit catamaran called Island Breeze. It was a charter boat from the Gulf Charters Thailand, based on the CHANG Island in the Trat district of Thailand. Here's a view of the Island Spirit catamaran gliding over the waters while I was sitting on the bow put seat. Beautiful, beautiful day. You'll see a garland of flowers on the bow, and that's an offering to the goddess of journeys called Maya Yanang, similar to a Christopher medal. After travelling down from the airport, we stayed overnight at one of the small resorts at Koh Chang, and then went and picked up the boat, and after a briefing of around 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. we headed out towards one of the islands called Koh Mai, and spent the evening at anchor at that island. After a lovely breakfast cooked by my wife, we headed south towards Koh Mak, which is another island south of Koh Chang, and as you can see, the wind was about 10 to 15 knots. Oh, wow. And it was quite a comfortable journey south. This Island Spirit was only about 12 months old and only just recently in the charter group, and we were probably the second or third people to use the boat. These Island Spirit catamarans are quite stable in the water, and you can put a cup of tea on the table and it will stay there all day. And you can see the wind was just coming up a little bit more, and still it was a nice pleasant ride and a quite comfortable experience. Our average speed on this journey was around 5 knots. In 10 to 15 knots of wind. These boats are meant for cruising and not for speed. So with the winds varying between 10 and 15 knots, here's a view from the starboard side. So standing at the helm station steering the boat, you've got a canopy above you, and there is also a canopy on the port side. You'll probably also notice that there's no helm station on the port side. You have to be a catamaran enthusiast, and cruising on a cat is quite different to working for a living on a monohull boat. It's a matter of choice. And as I'm getting older, I tended to gravitate more towards catamarans rather than monohulls. The wind died down, and rather than bore people, I filmed the boat's waterline and the boat sliding through the water. Here's a view from the port side, and you'll see that the canopy and also a nice comfortable seat higher up than my catamaran, with a helm station and wheel on the port side as well. You also notice that the winches are on top of the roof, whereas mine lead back to the starboard side helm station. We lost the wind, so the motors went on, so we ended up motor cruising for that period of time when there was no wind. So later on in the day the winds came back up a bit and we were able to cruise comfortably without the engines. And you can see in the background the KOH from memory. So continuing south, we headed for an island called CHANG and continued our journey south with rather nice winds. So with the winds dropping down to 5 knots, we went back to motor sailing and relaxed and looked at the views in the lovely warm KOH weather. Here's a view of the stern of the boat, and you'll notice that I've tied the dinghy off onto one of the cleats to stop it building up and down. Later on I changed the way I configured the ropes. It was perfect conditions for single-handed learner sailor in this KOH area, so if you're a beginner and you want to hire a charter boat, then head for KOH. I'd also strongly suggest that before you buy your own boat that you charter at least 5 times and work out your sums. Most of this trip was with one reef on the main. We didn't have any gales for the first few days, so it was a quite comfortable trip. When you come from southern Australia in the winter, you have to really wear a hat, sunglasses and use sun cream because you get burnt very easily in the tropic. For those that are more observant than others, you'll see that the outboard engine is not vertical, and I don't recommend that. So then the winds came up to about 15 knots before they died again, but while they were up we enjoyed some good speeds with the sails only, and you can see the wind blowing on the sleeve of my shirt, and we're heading away from the KOH island, heading further south. While the wind was up, I changed course and headed east and was able to get the catamaran up to between 9 and 11 knots at times. So when the winds dropped down, I set the autopilot on and I sat and enjoyed a drink in the galley area, the lounge area, and headed back towards the island of KOH. And here you can see my wife enjoying the peace and tranquility of the cruise, playing with her mobile phone Candy Crunch game, I think it's called. Here's a view of the helm station, a flat surface rather than an angle. My boat has the 45-degree angle at the helm station and doesn't have this walled partition where the gauges are, so the weather tends to get in to the galley area and the lounge area in storms. I've since started redesigning and building a sort of a wall. The next day the winds died right down and we did some motor cruising with only the head sail out and the main we left down, and as you can see it was flat calm. So if you're ever after a stress-free holiday and you know how to sail, then definitely go and soak up the sun and enjoy the sunsets on a catamaran cruise. If you can afford to charter, please, then I thoroughly recommend it. The next day started with very, very light winds, and we had the head sail out with no main. There was no point in having the main sail up, so we motor sailed from west to east on the northern edge of KOH and KOH. You can see KOH in the background. On days like this, you've got to find a different way of enjoying yourself, and the peace and tranquility of sitting in the shade of the head sail on the bowput chair. And you can see there's no wind in that sail, and the water sliding underneath between the two hulls of the catamaran made a very, very pleasant day. One of the redeeming features about an Island Spirit catamaran is the view and space in the galleon lounge area. And it's not cramped, it's very, very comfortable. And you can see my son paying attention to his mobile phone. It was extremely hot, and before we lost the wind completely, it would have been 40 degrees, and we were drinking a lot of water. You can see there's no clouds in the sky, and it became quite uncomfortable. And if you have a look above at the main sail, there was hardly any wind, so it wasn't doing a good job. But then later on in the day, the wind returned, and ever so slightly, and we enjoyed some sailing rather than motor sailing. So on the last night at anchor, after securing the boat, I had a bit of a swim before it got dark, right on dusk, and you can see my son still interested in his mobile phone. For those who have been paying attention, you may have noticed a plastic bag on one of the starboard stanchions, and the idea behind the plastic bag was from the helm station with the canopy, I couldn't see the wind vane, and I like to look at the wind vane rather than the wind gauge, and the plastic bag gave me a better idea while I was looking forward at the angle of the wind. The video was produced by myself, and it's the end of another exciting video of our March 2017 cruise around CHANG Island group on the sailing vessel Island Breeze, one of the charter group boats.